The Exposition of Karma. Homage to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Thus did I hear at one time. The Bhagavan was staying in Shravasti, in Prince Jeta's grove, Anatta Pindida's park. There the Bhagavan addressed the Brahmin youth Śuka thus, "Son, I will teach you the exposition of karma. Listen carefully and remember it well, and I will teach." "Please do so, Bhagavan." The Brahmin youth Śuka having thus assented, the Bhagavan said to him, "Son, I say that beings are owners of their own actions. They originate from their actions, they are heirs of their actions, and they take action as their refuge. In this way, son, beings are divided into high, middle, and low in terms of their actions. In this regard, there are, for instance, the actions that lead to a short life. What kind of action leads to a short life? Killing, rejoicing in killing, celebrating killing, instigating the death of an enemy, praising the death of an enemy, causing death in the womb, praising the causing of death in the womb, and preparing the sacrificial ground where buffalo, cows, pigs, birds, and so on are to be killed. The children and grandchildren of the originator of this sacrifice, as well as other people hoping for a positive result or acting out of fear, will kill many beings as they continue to carry out this initial sacrifice. For example, in a certain city in Kashmir, a certain mendicant who was an arhat was sitting at the door of a house. On a road leading straight to this house, a miserably mooing cow was being led on a lead. The mendicant, having seen the cow, exclaimed, "Alas, what a misery!" The people then asked the mendicant, "Acharya, why did you say, 'Alas, what a misery'?" He replied, "Although I usually do not speak to those without faith, in this particular case I will speak." Then he said, "That cow being led along there, mooing, was in a former existence a rich merchant. He had prepared a piece of land for the yearly sacrifice and killed a great many cows there. When the time of his death drew near, he called his sons and said to them, 'Sons, if you love me, you will also execute this yearly cattle sacrifice after I'm dead.' So instructed, the sons agreed and said, 'We will.' Then this man died, and because he had killed out of confusion, was reborn as a cow in his own house. After having been reborn there again and again, and having been killed time and again, this is now the 6th time he is being led to the sacrificial ground." The mendicant then said to the cow with pity, "You yourself have prepared this very sacrificial ground. You yourself have performed this very sacrifice and killed many cows. Your mooing is to no avail. What is it good for?" So it was said. Seeing the preparation of a sacrificial ground such as this is like witnessing a battle during which many beings such as humans and horses are killed, or like being thrilled about the accoutrements of war. As the Buddha has said in the Kalika Sutra, Ananda, resorting to killing and having grown accustomed to it and practiced it often, becomes the cause for rebirth in the hells, in the animal realm, or as a ghost. When killing is done few times and on a small scale, it leads to having a short lifespan. What kind of action leads to a long life? Abstaining from killing, speaking praise of abstaining from killing and encouraging others to do so, freeing people and cattle, pigs, birds, and so forth that are to be killed, giving protection to those stricken with fear, arousing thoughts of kindness towards those who are without protection, arousing thoughts of love toward those who are sick, children, and the elderly, giving food to and arousing thoughts of love toward those who are in need, and rejecting all those things referred to above concerning war and so forth, and instead practicing virtue, such as renovating and restoring stupas and monasteries that have fallen into disrepair. It is said in that same sutra, "For he who restores what has fallen into ruin, untimely death will not occur." This kind of action leads to a long life. What kind of action leads to having many illnesses? Anger and hitting someone with the fist or the palm of the hand, enjoying hitting somebody with the fist or the palm of the hand, speaking praise of the merit of hitting someone with the fist or the palm of the hand, and encouraging it, causing one's parents mental or physical distress, causing monks who possess moral discipline mental distress, feeling glad when one's enemies are stricken by illness, feeling unhappy when one's enemies recover from an illness, and not giving medicine and giving indigestible foods. This kind of action leads to having many illnesses. What kind of action leads to having few illnesses? Not hitting someone with the palm of the hand or with the fist, encouraging others to abstain from hitting with the palm of the hand or the fist, and praising the merits of abstaining from hitting, rejoicing in not hitting, serving one's ill parents, householders, and monks, regardless of whether they are senior or junior monks, caring for the sick, not feeling happy or glad when one's enemies fall ill, rejoicing in their recovery, and giving medicine and digestible food. This kind of action leads to having few illnesses. What kind of action leads to having an ugly appearance? Anger, enmity, resentment, spite, speaking ill of one's parents, speaking ill of householders and of senior or junior monks, soiling stupas and monasteries, and the sight of a stupa, extinguishing offering lamps at stupas and images, deriding ugly people, and having little sense of cleanliness. This kind of action leads to ugliness. What kind of action leads to beauty? The opposites of anger, enmity, resentment, and spite: donating clothing, plastering stupas and monasteries with white lime, donating beautiful bowls, making an offering of incense, scented ointment, cloth, and ornaments, praising one's parents, praising noble ones and those who possess moral discipline, cleaning and sweeping the court around a stupa, a monastery, and one's house, not deriding ugly people, not deriding others in general, whether old or young, and being very cleanly. This kind of action leads to beauty. What kind of action leads to having little power? Avarice, envy, being unhappy about others' successes, being unhappy when others are praised, despising one's parents, despising noble ones and those who possess moral discipline, despising the sick, the old, and the young, praising what is vile, what is lacking dharma, and the roots of non-virtue, and turning away from the mind of awakening. This kind of action leads to having little power. What kind of action leads to being powerful? Not being avaricious, not being envious, rejoicing in others' successes, not rejoicing in others' failures, rejoicing in hearing about others' glory, renown, and good reputation, being happy when others are praised, building stupas and monasteries in commemoration of the Bhagavan, turning away from what is vile, from what is lacking dharma, and from the roots of demerit, encouraging others to engage in the roots of merit that lead to distinction, aspiring to reach awakening, and aspiring to attain distinction through the dedication of all roots of merit. This kind of action leads to being powerful. What kind of action leads to being born into a low social status? vanity, conceit, not honoring one's father and mother, shramanas and brahmanas, not respecting the head of a family, not attending to one's parents, not attending to noble ones, to those who possess moral discipline, and to others occupying a position of authority, such as one's preceptor and one's teacher, and despising people of low class. This kind of action leads to being born into a low social status. What kind of action leads to being born into a family of high social status? Having little vanity, having no conceit, honoring one's father and mother, shramanas and brahmanas, honoring the head of the family, attending to one's parents, attending to noble ones, to those who possess moral discipline, and to others occupying a position of authority, such as one's preceptor and teacher, and not despising people of low class. For example, the Buddha has said in a sutra, "Monks, you should know that a community that is approached by monks who possess moral discipline, are celibate, and possess the quality of virtue, can expect 5 benefits. What are the 5? It develops faith in the ones possessing moral discipline who have approached them. Furthermore, monks, at that time, that community enters the path leading to rebirth in heaven. And what is more, monks, the moment the community greets and welcomes those approaching who possess moral discipline, the community has already entered the path leading to rebirth in heaven. This kind of action leads to being reborn in a family of high social status." What kind of action leads to poverty? Stealing, encouraging others to commit theft, speaking praise of stealing, taking pleasure in stealing and in having stolen, depriving one's parents of their livelihood, depriving noble ones and those who possess moral discipline of their livelihood, and stealing the livelihood of monks, children, the elderly, the poor, and the sick, rejoicing when others fail to gain wealth, preventing others from gaining wealth, and rejoicing in a bad harvest. This kind of action leads to poverty. What kind of action leads to wealth? Abstaining from stealing, rejoicing when someone abstains from taking what was not freely given to them by others, providing one's parents with a livelihood, providing noble ones and those who possess moral discipline with a livelihood, offering sustenance to the sick, children, the elderly, the poor, and others, rejoicing in the gain of others, and rejoicing in a good harvest. In the same sutra, it is said, "What is more, monks, when the merit-collecting communities make offerings to those approaching them who possess moral discipline, they enter the path leading to prosperity. This kind of action leads to great wealth." What kind of action leads to low intelligence? Here, one does not ask the learned shramanas or brahmanas or others, "What is the Dharma? What is not the Dharma? What, when done by me, is conducive to happiness?" One associates with people who lack intelligence and abandons wise people. One teaches what is not the true Dharma, and even though one knows that a reciter of the Buddhist scriptures has spoken well, due to one's being opinionated, one does not say, "Well done." But when a reciter has spoken what does not correspond with the Dharma, one says, "Well done." One praises wrong views and criticizes right views. One denigrates writers and reciters of manuscripts and deprives them of their livelihood. This kind of action leads to low intelligence. What kind of action leads to great intelligence? Here one has a disposition that dares to inquire and asks the learned shramanas and brahmanas questions. One completely shuns those lacking wisdom. One extols the true Dharma and elucidates it. One criticizes what is not the true Dharma, and one praises the confidence of the Dharma reciters and says, "Well done." One acclaims those who speak coherently, and steers clear of those who speak what is unacceptable. One praises right view, and criticizes wrong view. One makes offerings of paper, ink, and reed pens, and as explained in the Nandika Sutra, one does not drink alcohol. The 35 faults of drinking alcohol that are taught in that sutra will be discussed later in the section on the non-virtuous actions. This kind of action leads to great intelligence. What kind of action leads to rebirth as a hell being? Carrying out gravely negative actions of body, speech, and mind with intensely angry thoughts. Entertaining the wrong view of annihilation, the wrong view of eternalism, and the wrong view of nihilism. Speaking with hostility, ingratitude, performing the evil actions that bring immediate retribution, and flinging false accusations at noble ones and those who possess moral discipline. This kind of action leads to rebirth in the hell realms. What kind of action leads to rebirth in the animal realm? Carrying out moderately bad actions with body, speech, and mind, and the varied actions stemming from desire, hatred, and confusion. Presenting improper gifts to one's parents or Buddhist monks. Ridiculing beings who were reborn in the animal realm, and making the aspiration to be reborn there, as, for example, when someone practices the ox vow or the dog vow, thinking, "May I be reborn like that." As an example, one may here relate the heroic past deeds of the Bodhisattva from the Simhajataka, or the story of the Brahmin Vajrakara's rebirth as a monkey. The Brahmin Vajrakara saw the Starvira Mahakashyapa on Vulture Peak, flying in the sky above the city of Rajgir. Because of his close association with Devadatta and Prince Ajatashatru, he harbored hostile thoughts in his mind and made this insulting comment. "This monk flies through the air from mountain peak to mountain peak, just as a monkey swings from tree to tree." When the Brahmin Vajrakara, his mind filled with hatred, had made this insulting comment, the Buddha was asked, "Venerable Bhagavan, what will be the karmic result of this?" The Bhagavan replied, "By the karmic ripening of these abusive words, the Brahmin Vajrakara will be reborn as a monkey during 500 future lives." Vajrakara then became frightened and developed faith in the Buddha. He asked the Bhagavan at the time of his parinirvana, where will this deed become exhausted? The Bhagavan said, "During these 500 lives, you will be reborn in Rajgir in the Jambu continent, the rose apple continent, which derives its name from the fruits called jambu, that are the size of large earthen pots, and delicious like the pure honey of bees. From there, leaving this incarnation, you will reach heaven." To give another example, having been reborn among lions by virtue of a thought of hatred, the Bhagavan spoke the following stanza in reference to this topic. "Long is the night for the one who lies awake. Long is a yojana for the one who is exhausted. Samsara is long for the foolish, even if they are acquainted with the holy Dharma." This kind of action leads to rebirth in the animal realm. What kind of action leads to rebirth in the realm of ghosts? Here, someone adopts a negative course of conduct of body, speech, and mind, with a mind full of anger and hatred or craving, pursues a wrong way of making a living due to improper desire, dies while being angry, hungry, or thirsty, or dies while having thoughts of attachment to material things. An illustration from the Shatavaga Agama Karmavibhaṅga Sutra. The Bhagavan said to Ananda, Ananda, either an action done by a person in a previous lifetime resurfaces and becomes present, or it becomes the force that leads to wrong views at the time of death. This kind of action leads to rebirth in the realm of ghosts. What kind of action leads to rebirth in the realm of the asuras? Someone's committing only small or minor misdeeds with body, speech, and mind. Pride, arrogance, the pride of identification with a self, the pride of inferiority. Dedicating the roots of virtue of one's positive actions to rebirth in the world of the asuras, and following an immoral course of conduct, yet in an intelligent manner that springs from refined desire. This kind of action leads to rebirth in the realm of the asuras. What kind of action leads to rebirth as a human? Here one cultivates the 10 virtuous courses of action. What are the 10? One abandons the 10 non-virtuous actions, the 3 physical actions of killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct, the 4 verbal actions of lying, slander, harsh speech, and idle talk, and furthermore, the 3 mental actions of covetousness, malice, and wrong views. This kind of action leads to rebirth as a human. What kind of action leads to rebirth as a deva belonging to the realm of sensuous desire? Here someone practices well and brings to perfection the 10 virtuous courses of action. This kind of action leads to rebirth as a deva belonging to the realm of sensuous desire. What kind of action leads to rebirth as a deva belonging to the realm of form? Someone practices well the 10 virtuous courses of action, accomplishes them, and brings them to perfection to an especially superior degree. This kind of action leads to rebirth as a deva belonging to the realm of form. What kind of action leads to rebirth as a deva belonging to the formless realm? One enters the 4 attainments of the formless states, and having entirely and completely transcended all notions of form, and the notion of materiality having vanished, through disengaging the mind from the notion of distinctness, thinking, space is infinite, one has perfected the sphere of infinity of space and abides in it. Having entirely and completely transcended the sphere of infinity of space, thinking, consciousness is infinite, one has perfected the sphere of infinity of consciousness and abides in it. Having entirely and completely transcended the sphere of infinity of consciousness, thinking nothing at all exists, one has perfected the sphere of nothingness and abides in it. Having entirely and completely transcended the sphere of nothingness, one has perfected the sphere of neither perception nor non-perception and abides in it. This kind of action leads to rebirth as a deva belonging to the formless realm. What kind of action is performed but not accumulated? Having carried out an action, one feels shame, remorse, and deprecation, and one confesses and openly admits one's faults. One parts with it and vows not to do it again in the future. This kind of action is performed but not accumulated. What kind of action is accumulated but not carried out? An action that is to be completed with the body, and concerning which one says with a defiled mind, I will do this, but then does not actually follow through. This kind of action is accumulated but not carried out. What kind of action is both carried out and accumulated? Having carried out an action, one does not feel shame. One does not remedy it, regret it, deprecate it, confess it, admit it, renounce it, or give it up. And one does not vow not to do it again in the future. Action like this is both carried out and accumulated. What kind of action is neither carried out nor accumulated? An action that one has intentionally carried out, or made someone else carry out in a dream, action like this is neither carried out nor accumulated. What kind of action leads to being reborn in hell and passing away from there only after having completely exhausted the lifespan of the hell? In this regard, one has carried out actions that lead to rebirth as a hell being, and these actions are accumulated. But having carried out these actions, one feels neither shame nor remorse, and one neither deprecates nor confesses and admits the actions done. One does not vow not to do them again in the future, but instead rejoices and is satisfied, like, for instance, Devadatta, Kokalika, and so forth. Action like this leads to being reborn in hell, and passing away from there only after having completely exhausted the lifespan of the hell. What kind of action leads to being reborn in hell, and passing away from there after only half the lifespan of the hell is exhausted? In this regard, someone has carried out actions that lead to becoming a hell being, but feels shame and remorse, and deprecates, confesses, admits, rejects, and gives up those actions and vows not to do them again in the future. In this way, does this kind of action lead to being reborn in hell and passing away from there after only half the lifespan of the hell is exhausted. What kind of action leads to passing away from hell immediately upon being born there? In this regard, one has carried out actions that lead to rebirth as a hell being, and these actions are accumulated. But having done these actions, one feels shame, remorse, and deprecation, confesses and admits those actions, and gives them up. By making the promise, "From now on I will not do it again," one will pass away from that state immediately upon being reborn there. For example, when King Ajatashatru heard that he would go to the Avicii hell for carrying out the evil actions that bring immediate retribution, namely murdering his father, splitting the monastic Sangha, releasing the wild elephant Dharmapala, and hurling a boulder onto the Tathagata to kill him, he became distraught and developed faith in the Bhagavan. He confessed his sins, and as is related in the Shramanyapala Sutra, restored his roots of virtue. When he was about to die, he prayed, "From the core of my being, I take refuge in the Buddha. I have carried out intolerable actions, for which I feel remorse, and which I confess, by promising not to do such actions ever again. They will diminish and eventually be completely erased." Then he went silent. This kind of action leads to passing away from hell immediately upon being born there. What kind of action leads to a predetermined rebirth? As for that, a person carries out an action, and by dedicating the action in a certain way, "May I be reborn as such a one," that person will be reborn as that one. For example, in the Syama Kajataka, the Bhagavan relates accordingly how one is reborn through the power of a strong aspiration. This kind of action leads to a predetermined rebirth. What kind of action leads to an unpredetermined rebirth? As for that, a person carries out an action but does not dedicate it by specifying, "May I be reborn as such and such." This kind of action leads to an unpredetermined rebirth. What kind of action leads to the ripening of a karmic result in a foreign country? In this regard, there will be ripening of a pleasant or painful karmic result in a foreign country, either in this very life or in the next. For example, the Bhagavan has told the following story. Monks, once upon a time, when the lifespan of humans of the Jambu continent was indefinite, like that of the king Mandata, there lived in a certain city a sea merchant's son named Maitrayajna. Surrounded by 500 friends, he went to an orchard, where his friends said to him, "In this city, merchants like your father were sailors travelling to foreign lands, like, for instance, the Golden Island, to see other continents and accumulate riches. We, yourself included, should set sail and accumulate riches too." Maitrayajna replied, "So be it." And when darkness fell, he went home to his mother and said, "Mother, I will go to the Golden Island." His mother replied, "Son, there is already such immeasurable wealth in this house. Don't go." Maitrayajna, after hearing his mother's words, which persuaded him not to go, immediately went back to the orchard. The friends said, "In this matter you need to entreat your mother even more." Having heard their words, he said, "So be it," and again went to his mother to ask. But she clasped his feet, and so again he stayed. Immediately upon having asked her for a third time, he went back to the orchard. His friends said to him, "This is impossible, we must go." And Maitrayajna went once again to his mother and said, "I will go to a foreign land." The mother then gathered all their possessions, clasped one of his feet, and made him stay once again. Therefore, once more the boy went to the orchard, and his friends said, "It is your fault that we too still have not left. We will now leave on the 13th day." Then Maitrayajna, without his mother's knowledge, drew out their abundant merchandise and put it on the street. His mother, standing in the doorway, clasped his feet again and said, "Son, don't go." But Maitrayajna, in his anger, stepped on his mother's head, left, and went to the shore of the sea. There he instructed his friends, "When we are going to set sail, it is uncertain whether we will live or die. Therefore we should all maintain the 8 precepts." And they, heeding Maitrayajna's words, promised to maintain the precepts. Thus they set sail, and when they had gone far into the center of the ocean, they were caught by a mighty storm, and their ship capsized. All the others died, but Maitrayajna had seized a large copper vessel whose mouth could be closed with a piece of fabric, and eventually he reached the end of the ocean. He then continued to wander until he came to a city with a golden city wall and an orchard and a lotus pond that was pervaded by a pleasant fragrance. He saw flower petals scattered everywhere, and many wreaths made from silk ribbons that had been put up as ornaments. From inside this city, 4 goddesses appeared, and taking him by the hand, led him inside. Then, after he amused himself with them for many years, many hundreds of years, many thousands of years, and many hundreds of thousands of years, the goddesses ordered him, "Son of noble family, since you are a stranger in this land, you should not go outside. However, if you happen to leave sometime, head north." On another occasion, Maitrayajna left the city and continued wandering until he arrived at a city with a silver city wall and an orchard and a lotus pond that was pervaded by a pleasant fragrance. He saw flower petals scattered everywhere, and many wreaths made from silk ribbons that had been put up as ornaments. From inside the city, 8 goddesses appeared. Like before, after he had amused himself with them, at some other time he left. After wandering and wandering, he arrived at a city with a lapis lazuli city wall. Just as before, he saw flower petals scattered everywhere, and many wreaths made from silk ribbons hung up as ornaments. From inside the city 16 goddesses appeared, and they too took him by the hand and led him inside. And with them too he amused himself for many hundreds of thousands of years. At a later time he left, and after wandering and wandering, he arrived at a city with a rock crystal city wall, and he saw everything like before, from the scattered flower petals to the wreaths made from silk ribbons. From inside this city 32 goddesses appeared, and they too took him by the hand and led him inside. As before, after he had amused himself with them, they ordered him, "Son of noble family, since you are a stranger in this land, you should not leave this city. However, if you have to go, head north." Immediately afterwards, he left the house, faced north, and walked and walked. Eventually he came to a thicket of thorns and saw a city with a black iron city wall. He approached, and as soon as he stepped inside, the city's gates slammed shut. Looking up the city walls, he saw them rising higher, and he could hear a dreadful sound coming from beyond them. "What kind of place is this?" he thought, and he became terrified when he saw a man whose head was cut by a wheel made of sword blades that was rotating above his head. "Hey, you, what is this?" he asked, and that hell being replied, "This is a personal hell." Maitrayajna asked, "What sins have you committed?" The man told his story. "In the Jambu continent there is a city called Mahakoshali. There I used to live, and I too happened to be a son of a sea merchant. Surrounded by 500 friends, I went to the city's orchard. There my friends said, 'Your father is the head of the Sea Merchants' Guild,' and following his lead, they, our fathers, travelled to foreign lands and procured vast riches. They saw the Golden Island, the island of Sri Lanka, and many other islands. We too, with you as our leader, will travel to foreign countries." So they pledged. Then I went home and said to my mother, "I will go aboard a ship and voyage the ocean to go to foreign countries." My mother replied, "Son, your father too has gone aboard a ship, and having gone to many foreign countries, he died. Son, you are all I have left. Our house is filled with riches. Don't go." I too promised my mother that I would not go. In this way, Mother clasped my feet 3 or 4 times, bidding me to stay, and I stayed. But at another time, I went to the orchard, and my friends said, "We will go anyway." "Well, we should go then," I said, and by making this promise, we departed. My mother clasped my feet at the door and said, "It is not right to leave me behind." But I stepped on my mother's head and went off with my 500 friends to the shore of the sea. After we took up the 8 precepts, we set sail. We were well on our way to the Golden Island when a strong gale caught us and capsized the ship, killing all the friends. As for myself, after many days I reached the end of the ocean. I started to wander, and after continuously walking I eventually arrived at a city with a golden city wall and an orchard and a lotus pond that was pervaded by a pleasant fragrance. I saw flower petals scattered everywhere, and many wreaths made from silk ribbons that had been put up as ornaments. From inside that city 4 goddesses appeared, 32 goddesses appeared, and so on as before, until I saw a city enclosed by an iron wall and went inside. As soon as I stepped inside, the gates slammed shut. There, too, I saw a man with a wheel made of swords rotating above his head. and there and then the wheel was transferred to where I was standing nearby, onto my own head. Due to the ripening of the karmic fruit of my action of having desisted from leaving home by obeying my mother's words 4 times and taking up the 8 precepts, I enjoyed a personal heaven in 4 cities. Due to the ripening of the karmic fruit of my action of stepping on my mother's head when setting out, a wheel made of sword blades is now rotating above and lacerating my head. Upon hearing this, Maitrayajna thought, I too have in the past carried out an action that is very similar to that one. I can see that the ripening of the karmic fruits of my own action is imminent. The hell being asked Maitrayajna, Where do you come from? And Maitrayajna told his story. In the Jambu continent there is a city called Tamalipta. I am from there. I too have done all those actions. It is true then, said the hell being. I heard a voice coming from the sky that said, The karmic fruit of your action is exhausted. One will come whose name is Maitrayajna, the son of a sea merchant, who has committed an action similar to yours. Maitrayajna asked, What kind of food do you eat here? I eat the flesh, pus, and blood flowing from my own shredded head. Then this man died there. Maitrayajna, terrified and distraught, made this aspiration for the sake of his mother. In all the countless worlds, from the peak of existence downward, from the Avicii hell upward, may the assemblies of gods, Asuras, and Mahoragas be happy, and may their suffering be taken on by me. With an earnest intention, he bowed down in reverence to his imagined parents, and made another aspiration. Wherever I am reborn, I will honor my parents. I will remain here in this individual hell for the sake of those who will be reborn here. To those in the world who are engaged in proper conduct and those who are liberated, I bow in reverence. I pray that they will protect me. And he stayed there as a being of this individual hell and made a further aspiration for the sake of his parents. From the Avicii hell down below, up to the peak of existence, may all the beings bound by the fetter of death, as many as there are without exception, live happily, intent on virtue, and may they experience the ageless, deathless nirvana. Due to this utterance, the wheel remained in the air above, rotating but without touching his head. And also because his mother perpetually made this aspiration, if there is any benefit to be derived from the merit that I have accumulated through my practice of generosity, ethics, and being a faithful wife, may the fruit of this merit lead to the happiness of my son, whatever and wherever he may be. He was at peace. And having stayed there in this personal hell, he passed away before even 60 years had passed. Accordingly, for example, King Ajatashatru passed away without having entirely completed his lifespan in hell. But since the karmic fruit of actions do not dissipate, he sometimes suffered from excruciating headaches. Then, when the right time had come, the Bhagavan addressed the monks. Monks, you may think that the sea merchant's son named Maitrayajna was just somebody else at that time. But this is not how you should see it. I myself was at that time the sea merchant's son named Maitrayajna. Therefore, monks, have faith in my words. You should cultivate reverence for the Bhagavan. You should cultivate reverence for the Dharma and the Sangha. You should also revere your parents, your preceptor, and your teacher. Know this, monks. Those who travel to a foreign land can experience both pleasure and pain. just like Maitrayajna, who after traveling to a foreign country experienced a personal heaven and a personal hell in a single lifetime. In this way, action that leads to the experience of pleasure and pain in a foreign country will ripen accordingly in a foreign country. Hence the Bhagavan has furthermore said the following: whether something is done for me or for your parents, your preceptor, or your teacher, there is no difference, and the karmic result is the same, experienced either in this lifetime or in the next. How, then, is the karmic result the same in this very life? For example, once in Shravasti, some poor person saw the Bhagavan, together with the Sangha of hearers, begging for alms. And because at that moment he developed reverence in his mind, he accumulated an immense stock of merit. And since this also created the action that led him to become a king, that reverence by itself became the seed for his liberation. When this came to the Bhagavan's attention, he uttered the following verses: "Those who rejoice in it are no less remunerated than those who carry out a service. They are both equally entitled to a share of the merit." And mind precedes phenomena. Phenomena appear due to mind, and they disappear due to mind. When one's mind is truly devoted, so will be one's speech and action in every way, always following the person like a shadow. Then one will find happiness. Then, at the moment of his death, he was reborn as a god. Another example is that of the Pracheka Buddha Tagara Shikin. During a famine, a poor man had offered some broth, and because of that he was anointed king in this city on that same day. Later he became a Pracheka Buddha. Furthermore, it is said in the sutras that the karmic fruit of a mind full of devotion, similar to that of the Pracheka Buddha, whose name is Tagara Shikin, will ripen in this very lifetime. When he honored his parent, Maitrayajna, the son of the sea merchant, experienced an individual heaven in 4 great cities, because he had listened to his mother's words and complied with them 4 times. Since it had become the seed for his liberation, the ripening of the karmic fruit took place in this life. Will one go to hell through expressing anger towards the Bhagavan and one's parents? An example here is Devadatta, who, after he had become angry with the Bhagavan, fell into the Avici hell immediately upon his death. Or there is the Prince Utraka in the city of Rauruka, in the land of Sindhu, who killed his father and consequently fell into the hell realms. Thus one will go to the hell realms through expressing anger toward the Bhagavan or one's parents. Now, is there a difference with regard to the Buddha and one's parents, or are they not different? Concerning the Bhagavan, generating devotion toward him, who during many hundreds of thousands of cosmic ages has accumulated a stock of merit generated by his roots of virtue, who taught the Dharma to those lacking a path, and who bestows awakening upon us, the karmic fruit is immeasurable. To parents, the path to liberation is unknown. Furthermore, one need not always obey the words of one's parents. Why not? Because there are some who hold false views, and who say to their child, "Child, bring us to an uninhabited place. You will benefit from this and be happy." Or, "Abandon us in a chasm, commit us to the flames." When they say such things, this ought not to be done. Why not? Because through murdering one's parents, one will certainly go to the hell realms. Therefore, the Bhagavan has said not to accept those who have killed their parents into the novitiate, and that such people should not be accepted for full ordination. And for this reason, Such people should be shunned. How then are one's parents, one's preceptor, and one's teacher equal? In this regard, the Bhagavan has said, parents love their children from the depths of their hearts. Therefore, when parents do not give their permission, one should not accept someone into the novitiate. Take, for example, the noble Rashtrapala, among others. When his parents did not let him go, the Bhagavan did not accept him as a novice. Still today, ordination is not given without parents' consent. Or, for example, it is said that when the Bhagavan himself adopted the life of a mendicant, his parents went blind out of grief for the loss of King Surodhana's son, because they had wished for the birth of a son who would uphold their legacy in these 5 areas. This son of ours that we will give birth to, after being born, will support us. He will continue to perform our duties. He will become the inheritor of our wealth. When we die, he will perform the ancestral food offerings, and he will continue the family lineage. The preceptor and the teacher, however, have compassion as their priority. Their sole concern is this: so long as he cannot adopt the life of a mendicant because his parents do not give their permission, how will this one, who has been wandering in samsara since time immemorial, reach the end of it? For example, the Bhagavan says the following in the Vinaya: the preceptor regards the pupil as a son. The pupil regards the preceptor as a father. Thus they consider each other parent and child. In this regard, the preceptor and the teacher are equal to the parents. Furthermore, the Bhagavan says in the Chakravarti Sutra, which action leads to the karmic result of the wheel-turning monarch obtaining the precious elephant and the precious horse? Carrying one's parents around on one's shoulders, or having them mount a carriage drawn by a horse or by an elephant, and carrying one's preceptor and one's teacher oneself. The wheel-turning monarch obtains the precious elephant and the precious horse through the karmic ripening of the action of having others carried. For this reason, too, are the parents and the preceptor and the teacher equal. Furthermore, for householders, parents are the object of adoration. For those who have adopted the life of a mendicant, the preceptors and the teachers are the object of adoration. For this reason, too, are preceptors and the teachers equal to parents. To give another example, the Bhagavan addressed the monks as follows. Monks, suppose someone took their parents on their back and roamed the Jambu continent with them, provided them with provisions, and filled the whole of the 4 continents with riches and gold. Even this kind of generosity could not repay the parents' kindness. But if someone were to cause another person to develop faith in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and establish them in the 5 precepts, and in the moral conduct that is praised by noble ones, in this way, children would be repaying their parents' kindness. And that is precisely what preceptors and teachers do. It is for this reason that the preceptor and the teacher are more distinguished than the parents. In short, ever since the time of the Bhagavan's nirvana, all those pacified and tamed monks, nuns, laymen and laywomen, and whoever else, have been pacified and tamed by their preceptors and teachers. It is because of this that the Bhagavan has said, monks, those who believe in my words should give rise to the highest faith in the Bhagavan, as well as in the Dharma and the Sangha. And they should give rise to the highest faith in their parents, their preceptor, and their teacher. This will lead to their benefit and happiness for a long time to come. This kind of action leads to the ripening of a karmic result in a foreign country. What kind of action leads to a person being happy at first, and becoming unhappy in the future. If someone were to ask this, one should reply as follows. Here a person is stopped by a beggar, for instance, and asked for alms or a donation, delightedly accepts and then gives with joy, but afterwards regrets having given. When this person is reborn as a human in a rich and wealthy family, later the wealth is consumed and depleted. Then this person becomes poor, just as in the story of Gopaka. He had offered a milk cow to the fully enlightened Buddha Krakuchanda and his sangha of monks. But later, people made him regret it so that he thought, it was not good to have given this. Therefore, because he had regrets, wherever he was reborn, he first was rich and then later, due to these regrets, became poor. Later he was reborn in Rajgir. His mother died at his birth, and people said, his birth is the reason for his mother's death. Since he was born under the constellation Mula, he will destroy this family. He is bad luck. And so they just discarded him, together with his mother, in the cemetery. But there, through the power of his merits, his mother's breasts still produced milk. In this way he nourished himself, developed fully, and eventually went to the Blessed One and became a monk. Thus, this was the karmic fruit of his action of first offering a milk cow with faith, and then later regretting it. His offering with a faithful attitude in the beginning became the very seed of his liberation. But due to his later regret, it is said, he always ended up poor. This kind of action leads to a person being happy at first and becoming unhappy in the future. What kind of action leads to a person being unhappy at first and becoming happy later? If someone were to ask this, one should reply as follows. In this case, someone is asked to make an offering, accepts only very reluctantly, and accordingly makes the offering only reluctantly. But following the offering they experience joy. Then, when reborn among humans, this person is born into a poor family at first, but later their wealth increases. This kind of action leads to a person being unhappy at first and becoming happy later. What kind of action leads to a person being both happy at first and happy in the future? In this case, someone is begged by somebody for alms, and delightedly and immediately agrees to give. And, having given his alms joyfully, this person later too is happy. Then, when reborn as a human being, this person will be reborn in a very rich and very wealthy family. This kind of action leads to a person being both happy at first and happy in the future. What kind of action leads to a person experiencing both suffering at first and suffering in the future? In this case, someone is without a spiritual friend, a spiritual preceptor, who would encourage him to give alms. Consequently, he gives nothing whatsoever. But he has not done nor accumulated any bad actions at all. When he is reborn as a human being, he will be born into a poor family that has to survive with a scarcity of food and drink due to hardship. When born there, he obtains food and clothing only with great difficulty. Also, in the future, his resources will not increase. This kind of action leads to a person experiencing both suffering at first and suffering in the future. What kind of action leads to a person being wealthy and stingy? A person makes only a small offering to those who possess moral discipline and who are recipients worthy of offerings, but he does not make a habit of the attitude of giving away. Then, when he is reborn as a human being, due to the power of generosity, he will be born into a rich family having great riches. However, because he did not make a habit of the attitude of giving away, he becomes stingy with his wealth. This kind of action leads to a person being wealthy and stingy. What kind of action leads to a person being poor and generous? In this case, a certain person makes offerings liberally to animals and to people who are ill-behaved. Then, when he is reborn as a human being, he will be both poor and generous. By virtue of having made practicing generosity a habit, he will be poor yet generous. This kind of action leads to a person being poor and being generous. What kind of action leads to a person being rich and generous? In this case, someone makes liberal offerings to those who possess moral discipline and who are worthy recipients of offerings, and makes a habit of the attitude of giving. Therefore, when he is reborn as a human being, he will be rich, and his wealth will be extensive. For example, consider the householder Anathapindada. He first offered Prince Jeta's grove to the completely perfect Buddha Krakuchanda, and had a monastery erected for the monks there. In the same manner, in former births, he offered Prince Jeta's grove to the completely perfect Buddha Kanakamuni, Kashyapa, and Savatasita, and he will equally offer it to Maitreya, with its entire ground strewn with gold. This kind of action leads to a person being rich and generous. What kind of person has exhausted their lifespan but not their actions? A person who dies in a hell realm and is reborn in that same hell realm, a person who dies as an animal and is reborn as an animal, a person who dies in the realm of ghosts and is reborn in the realm of ghosts, and a person who dies as a god and is reborn as a god. The Brahmin Vashakara, for instance, died repeatedly and was reborn as a monkey. Or, for instance, the aforementioned householder was repeatedly reborn as cattle. When a certain poor householder in Shravasti died, an ox with an ulcer on its shoulder was standing in front of the house. Because the householder was very attached to his house, after he had died, he was reborn as a maggot in the ox's ulcer. Immediately after he was reborn, a crow ate him, and later he was reborn in that same spot again as a maggot. In this manner, during one single day, he died and was reborn 7 times in this same spot. Or, for example, when the Venerable Mahamaudgalyayana was wandering through the country of Magadha collecting alms, he entered a house in which a householder sat together with his wife, holding their son in his lap. They were eating a meal of fish, while in front of them sat a dog, to whom they tossed the fish bones. Then, when the householder saw Mahamaudgalyayana, he said to him, "Friend, nobody here gives alms to beggars. Go away." And Mahamaudgalyayana turned around. At the door of that house there had been sitting all the while some man who had come from another country, and who knew the Stavira Mahamaudgalyayana. When he saw what had happened, he was amazed and said, "Oh dear, this venerable monk is the foremost among those possessing magical powers. He has tamed the kings of the Nagas, Nanda and Upananda. He shook the divine palace, Vaijayanta, with his left toe, and through that the king of the gods, Indra, marveled. He traversed the realm of the Trikiliocosm in the blink of an eye. These things being so, it is astounding that he was sent away without having been offered alms." Then the Stavira Mahamaudgalyayana, to instill in him a sense of weariness with samsara, said, "My dear, it is not so very astonishing." "Well, what then is astonishing?" the man asked. He replied, "This householder here, eating fish curry, is astonishing." The fish was his father. He would frequently scoop out and eat fish from the pond behind the house that carried a lot of fish. Then he died and was reborn as this very fish. His son, too, frequently scooped out and ate that fish many hundreds of times, and he, too, was reborn in that same spot many times, again and again. This female dog here was the householder's mother. She, overpowered by greed, never made an offering to anybody, and she never safeguarded ethical conduct, but instead meanly hoarded possessions for the sake of the family lineage. And after she had died with her thoughts attached to this same house, she was reborn here as that female dog. Then, after she died again, she was reborn again and again in this same place. This dog circles around the house on the outside for the whole night, afraid that somebody could enter. The son, sitting in the lap of that man, was the wife's lover. When the householder found out that his wife was sleeping with another man, he pretended that he had to go to another city. As soon as he left, the woman slept with the other man, but her husband returned home and killed him. But because he was attached and attracted to that woman, he was reborn in her womb. See, my dear, the meat they eat is their father's. The one to whom they toss the fish bones is the mother. The enemy, the adulterer, who is the one who was killed in a rage, they cradle in their lap. Therefore it is only reasonable to feel disgust for the faults of samsara, because this is truly astounding. Then the monk Maudgayayana recited a verse to instill a sense of weariness with samsara in the many people of the Western regions. With a consciousness obscured by delusion and desire, he eats his father's meat, tosses his mother the bones, and nourishes his wife's lover. This kind of person is someone whose lifespan is exhausted, but not their actions. What kind of person has exhausted their actions, but not their lifespan? A person who was happy at first and becomes unhappy in the future, or a person who was unhappy at first and in the future becomes happy. This kind of person is someone who has exhausted their actions, but not their lifespan.